Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squad for boxing news and views from around the internet. The heavyweight Hughie Fury has announced he's signed with Matchroom Boxing. So what I'll do is I'll get to the very brief press release and then some thoughts, because this has come from a little bit from left field, because I think many of us would have expected out of the two bigger promoters in the UK, if Hughie Fury was to sign with anyone, he would lean towards signing with Frank Warren, but this is not the case in this instance. He has gone to sign with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing. So the press release: Hughie Fury signs with Matchroom Boxing. Manchester heavyweight contender Hughie Fury has signed a multi-fight promotional deal with Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing, with his next fight will be announced at a press conference next week. The hugely gifted Manchester star has long shown himself to be one of the finest technical talents the UK has produced, and now the 24-year-old is ready to mount a third assault towards a heavyweight world title. The only defeats on Fury's 25-fight slate came at world level: a majority 12-round decision loss and a close and controversial WBO world title challenge to New Zealand's Joseph Parker in 2017, then a gallant and gory 12-round points loss to Kubrat Pulev in last October's IBF final eliminator in Sofia. I'm over the moon to be signing promotionally with Eddie and joining a stable as strong as Matchroom, said Fury. I feel with Matchroom's backing I can kick on now and really fulfill my potential. Watch this space, because it'll be exciting times over the next couple of years. Father and trainer Peter Fury added, "This is fantastic news for Hughie. People forget he's still only 24 years old, a baby for a heavyweight. Signing with Matchroom gives him the perfect platform to achieve his goal of rising to the top of the heavyweight division, and I have complete confidence in him doing just that. I am delighted to welcome Hughie Fury to the Matchroom Boxing team," said promoter Eddie Hearn. At such a young age, Hughie has been fearless, taking on world contenders, facing Joseph Parker for the world title at just 23, and recently travelling to Bulgaria to take on Kubrat Pulev in his backyard. This experience will be priceless, and I'm excited to see him in a big fight soon, at a time when the division is hotter than ever. So that concludes the press release, which is quite brief. So Hughie Fury signs with Matchroom, a fight to be announced next week at a press conference. Now, this is quite an interesting signing, because as I sort of said at the start, it's sort of come from left field, but it does make me wonder, well, what happened with, one, Hennessy Sports, but two, Channel 5. Hennessy Sports had a deal in place with Channel 5 for fights. Maybe that deal is still in place, but maybe Hughie Fury's, in terms of his promotional commitments to Hennessy Sports, maybe that was up and they've decided, actually, we need to make a change or whatever. But Hughie Fury said, and I almost thought it was a sort of a backhanded comment there, "I can kick on now and really fulfill my potential." If I was Mick Hennessy saying that, I would maybe be a little bit miffed at that, because effectively you could take that to be that he wasn't able to kick on where he was and he had to go somewhere else to do that. I mean, that's just one way that you can look at that. But Fury joining Matchroom, yeah, I think in terms of his career, he probably did need to join one of the two bigger UK promotional outfits if he was going to campaign in the United Kingdom. I think we've seen with some of the recent matchmaking, maybe they were going to struggle to get Hughie Fury in some meaningful fights, because there was the Chris Norad fight, which was his comeback after the Pulev loss. That was a complete mismatch, a guy with a padded record. And remember, this was broadcast to millions of people on Channel 5 in the UK. It was a bit of a farce, as was the Samuel Peter fight on that card in Saudi Arabia. It was all a bit weird how that fight ended. Fury was in control of it, but not necessarily dominating it. And after that fight, I think actually fan perception of him has fallen even further, if that was even possible. He hasn't really sort of covered himself with glory in terms of his performances of late, and the way that he's fought, and the perceptions that people have of him now is that he's not actually getting any better. The generally sort of regarded thoughts among the sort of the fandom is he's either sort of halted on his progress at 24 or even possibly regressed, because he hasn't looked that great. That Peter performance was not a fantastic performance, and the press release talked about him being one of the finest technical talents the UK has produced. you wouldn't really know that so much from watching that Samuel Peter performance. And yeah, he's got some work to do, and moving promotional outfits isn't necessarily going to fix anything related to the way he fights. That's up to him and his team, Peter Fury, his father, but he's got some way to come back in terms of regaining fan support and trust in his abilities, because I think among fans, their perception of Hughie Fury has been falling, like a stone since his loss to Joseph Parker. So he does need someone, I think, like an Eddie Hearn with a bigger stable. Eddie Hearn has the platform, he's got the shows, whereas McHenry necessarily doesn't. So he can actually put him into cards and maybe get him some better matches, better promotional backing. He's got more money behind Matchroom to actually get him into some fights that could potentially position him for a title shot or an eliminator at some point in his career in the next couple of years. I still think that he's in rebuild mode, and they need to tread carefully, because if he steps up to world level again, say in his next fight or the fight after that, it could all end up in disaster in terms of him falling short 3 times in a row. So they need to just be careful with the rebuild, but also some of this, what's happening with his technique and the way that he's fighting, because as I mentioned recently in my post-fight review, it sort of seems like he's betwixt in between about what he really wants to do. There's been so much criticism of his sort of negative back foot style that he's trying to mix in more aggression and output on the offensive end, but it ends up looking a little bit muddle, and he sort of looks one-dimensional, just throwing this looping, arcing right hand, which isn't really necessarily that effective. And Hughie Fury's not a massive knockout puncher. His record demonstrates that, but he seems to have fallen in love with the right hand and seemingly going away from some of his bread and butter. But he needs to work on some of these things, and obviously he needs a good performance or two to really sort of re-spark the interest in his career, because I think it has been on the wane of late. But what do you make of the signing? Hughie Fury to Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing. And just before I go, I should also note that Peter Fury, you'll see here on screen, thanks to Hennessy Sports for building Hughie Fury on Channel 5 over the years and continuing with management and always part of this team on the march to conquer this division. So it's clear that Hennessy Sports, Mick Hennessy's got some role still in Hughie Fury's career. So we shall see what next. But drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.